live stream, and in this live stream we are going to learn how to conjugate French regular verbs in the present tense. Ok, so on va prendre comment conjuguer les verbes, comment conjuguer les verbes au présent. Comment conjuguer les verbes au présent de l'indicatif. De l'indicatif. How to conjugate verbs in the present tense. Comment conjuguer les verbes au présent de l'indicatif. So in this lovely video, we are going to learn how to conjugate verbs in the present tense in French. Now we know that in the present tense, we have three groups of verbs. So we have, first we have les verbes réguliers. On a les verbes régulières, which basically means regular verbs. Et aussi, on a les verbes irréguliers, which means irregular verbs. So before you start conjugating verbs in French, you need to know which verbs are regular and which verbs are irregular. Now pour les verbes réguliers, on a trois groupes. We have three groups of verbs. Premier groupe, on a les verbes qui se terminent en ER. Verbs that end in ER. Examples, we have manger, jouer, regarder, among others. Deuxième groupe, we have les verbes qui se terminent en IR, verbs that end in IR. So here when you talk about regular verbs, we're seeing verbs that follow a particular pattern. Oui, quand on dit les verbes réguliers, we mean verbs that follow a particular pattern. For the deuxième groupe, les verbes qui se terminent en IR, on a les verbes comme finir. So it's called regular verb because it has a stem and it has an ending. Il y a le stem et le terminaison. We have finir, we have choisir. Oui, on a le verbe comme agir, verbs like agir, punir. Okay, and next we have, these are verbs that follow a particular pattern, regular verbs, les verbes réguliers en français. So the next group we have les verbes qui se terminent en RE, verbs that end in RE. Examples, we have attendre, which means to wait. We have entendre, which means to listen. Entendre. We have rendre, among others. Now, so we go ahead to learn how to conjugate ER verbs in present tense. So, how do you conjugate ER verbs in the present tense? First, you need to identify the stem of the verb. For example, le verbe manger. When you remove the ER, what remains is the stem. So you're going to have the stem, which will be M-A-N-G. That is the stem. And we have le terminaison, which means the ending. And it's going to be ER. Le terminaison qui est ER. Okay, so to conjugate this, we need to know the subject pronouns. Il faut identifier le sujet pronom. On a je, tu, il, elle, oui, et puis nous, vous et il au pluriel. So it could be il, elle. Okay, so on va conjuguer. So here we are going to conjugate. On va conjuguer manger au présent. We're going to conjugate the verb manger in the present tense. So manger means to eat. So this verb, we are going to conjugate it in the present tense. So manger, as it is, the way it is here, is known as a verb in the infinitive. A verb in the infinitive is a verb that has not been conjugated. Now, when we start putting it in the different subject pronoun, that process is what is known as conjugation. So now here we have the verb manger. On va conjuguer. We are going to conjugate it. We have said we identify the stem. And the stem in this case is going to be M-A-N-G. It's going to be M-A-N-N-G. So I'm going to write the stem all over. The stem. I'm writing the stem before I start to conjugate this verb. Mange. Je vais écrire le stem partout. I'm going to write the stem everywhere. Et puis, je vais ajouter les terminaisons. So I'm going to add the endings. Je is going to end with E. Tu is going to end in ES. Il is going to end in E. Elle, E, U. And nous, because it's a GER verb, is going to end in EONS. And vous is going to end in EZ. Il and elle is going to end in ONT. Comme ça. So what we have done is called conjugation. And the endings for ER verbs, for je, it ends with E, tu, ES, il, I, elle, I, nous, ONS, vous, OZ, il, et elle, ONT. So what you've done is conjugation. Now we say je mange, I'm eating. Tu manges, you are eating. Il mange, he is eating. Elle mange, she's eating. Nous mangeons, we are eating. Vous mangez, you are eating. Il, elle mange, they are eating. Now we want to try a sentence. We know that all nouns have gender. For example, you want to say, I'm eating a banana. You're going to say, je mange une banane. I'm eating a banana. Je mange une banane. That basically means I'm eating a banana. And the process goes on. The good thing about regular verbs is that once you know how to conjugate one regular verb, like for example, one ER verb, then you know the rest. Now, for example, if you had a verb like chanter, chanter means to sing. It's an ER verb. So the first thing you do, identify the stem. And the stem in this case is going to be C-H-A-N-T. The C-H-A-N-T. That will be our stem. We remove les terminaisons, the ER, and then we add the endings of ER verbs, which are U, US, U, U, UNS, UZ, UNT. Now, so if I'm conjugating this, we say the process of conjugating is matching the form of the verb with the different subject pronouns. And the subject pronouns, you have je, which means I. So I want to say I am singing. I'll say je chante. Tu chantes. Il chante. Nous chantons. You're singing, vous chantez, and il chante. They are singing. Okay, so je chante, tu chantes, il chante, nous chantons, vous chantez, il chante. We can say il, elle. au pluriel. Okay, now we're done with the first group of verbs. So we go to the second group of verbs. These are les verbes en IR, verbs that end in IR. Like usual, we had given examples of IR verbs like regular IR verbs. On a finir, we have finir. On a choisir, which means to choose. On a punir, to punish. On a rougir, and so forth. Now we want to conjugate the finir. So les terminaisons, we first identify the endings of IR verbs. Les verbes en IR, on va avoir je va se terminer avec IS, tu avec IS, il, elle avec IT, oui. On a nous va se terminer avec I, 2S, ONS. Vous va se terminer avec, ça c'est I, 2S, ONS. Vous, I, 2S, OZ. Et il au pluriel et elle au pluriel, on va avoir I, 2S, ONT. So those are endings for the second group. So we need to identify the stem, and to get the stem, we remove the IR. What remains is the stem. So if we look at the verb finir, which means to finish, and you want to conjugate it in the different persons, you're going to say je finis. I'm going first to write the stem, and then I'm going to add the endings. Je finis, tu finis, il, elle finit avec T, and then nous, on va dire nous finissons, which means we finish. Vous finissez, and il, elle finissent. So that's the conjugation of one of the IR verbs. Je finis, tu finis, il, elle finit, nous finissons, vous finissez, il, elle finissent. Okay, we can choose another verb. For example, we can choose the verb choisir, which means to choose, and to conjugate it in the present tense, I can say je choisis. I first identify the stem, and then I add the endings of IR verbs. So, je choisis, tu choisis. So that the ending for tu, say ES. Il au singulier. Il, elle. Choisit avec T. And then nous, on va dire, nous choisissons. We first write the stem, and then we add the terminaison, which will be I, 2S, ONS. Nous choisissons, et puis vous choisissez, and il, elle choisissent. And finally, we go to the last group, les verbes en RE, verbs that end in RE. So for verbs that end in RE, the rule remains the same. These are pretty easy. So for je, for example, I'm going to add an S. Je vais ajouter un S. Tu, je vais ajouter un S. I'm going to add an S. To il et elle, I'm not going to add anything. Il et elle, j'ajoute rien. I add nothing. Nous, this is pretty easy because I'm just going to add ONS. Vous, OZ, ONS, vous, OZ, et il, elle. Je vais ajouter ONT, INT. Alors, si j'ai le verbe attendre, which means to wait, I remove the ending, the RE, and then I conjugate this in the present tense. So, I put apostrophe because attendre begins with a vowel. So, I'm going to say j'attends, I am waiting, and then tu attends, I add an S. You remember I've removed the ending, which is the RE, and then I put les terminaisons pour les verbes en RE. So, je vais dire j'attends, I'm waiting. Tu attends, il attend. I'm not going to add anything there. And then I go to nous, we, nous attendons, we are waiting. And vous attendez, you are waiting. Ils attendent, they are waiting. Okay, so this will be il, elle. Example in a sentence, je peux dire j'attends le bus. I'm waiting for the bus. J'attends le bus. This means I am waiting for the bus. Now, regular verbs are easy to conjugate because they follow a particular pattern. Yeah, you just need to identify the stem of the verb and we need to identify the endings. So just a quick recap of what we have said. We have said les verbes réguliers. Au présent, on a les verbes en ER, verbs in ER, like manger. And when you're conjugating that, we remove the ER and then we add the endings for ER verbs. Je mange, tu manges, il mange, elle mange, nous mangeons, vous mangez, il, elle mange. Okay? Now, example in a sentence, je mange une banane. Okay? Another example is the verb chanter, which means to sing. The verb chanter, which means to sing. And in a sentence, I just remove the endings, the ER, et puis j'ajoute les terminaisons. So I'm going to have je chante, tu chantes, il, elle chante, nous chantons, vous chantez, il, elle chante. I can say je chante une chanson. I'm singing a song. Ou je chante. That already is a sentence. Okay, je chante chaque. I sing every day. Je chante chaque jour. Okay, we go to the next one, the second group, les verbes on ER. These are IR verbs. Examples of IR verbs, we have finir, choisir, punir, rougir. Most of these are formed from adjective, like rougir comes from the adjective rouge, which means red. So to conjugate these verbs, I remove the IR and then I put les terminaisons. So, les terminaisons des verbes en IR, and this for verbs that end in IR, R, IS, pour je, tu, IS, il et elle, IT, nous, I2S, ONS, vous, on va voir, I2S, OZ, and il and elle, I2S, ONT. Examples, I can have je finis, tu finis, il, elle finit, nous finissons, vous finissez, il, elle finissent. Okay, that basically means to finish. For example, I can say elle finit, elle finit son devoir. She's finishing her homework. Okay, I go to the next one, choisir, which means to choose. To conjugate this, I remove the ending, the IR, and then I add the endings for higher verbs. So I'm going to have je choisis, tu choisis, il, elle choisit, nous choisissons, vous choisissez, ils, elles choisissent. And that goes on and on. You can apply the rule in other verbs. Now we have the verbs on RO, verbs that end in RE. And the endings for this verb are je avec S, tu, S, il, elle. On n'ajoute rien. We don't add anything. Nous, ONS, vous, OZ, il, elle, ONT. And examples, we have attendre. So to conjugate this, on va dire j'attends, tu attends, il attend, nous attendons, vous attendez, ils attendent. An example in a sentence, je peux dire j'attends le bus, which basically means I'm waiting for the bus. Merci beaucoup, à la prochaine et au revoir.